Welcome, everybody, to another episode of This, That, and the Other. I'm your host, Magic, and this is our first attempt to do a StreamYard live broadcast. I am detecting some audio feedback issues. We'll look at seeing what's causing that later on. But first and foremost, this will be the third platform that This, That, and the Other has been on since I think we started in March of this year. So here in just 4 or 5 months' time, we've changed platforms. This, like I said, the third time. The reason is we're trying to bring you good content, quality content we listen to our audience. And, one of the issues that a lot of people had was, of course, the name being associated with the pictures on the screen or the video on the screen. And it was great when we were on the Zoom meeting because it was there. We could see it, but when it was recorded, it didn't record over. That was one of their things that you get with a premium, and it just wasn't didn't make sense to pay a premium at this time for that. So we've gone to StreamYard, thanks to the recommendation from Bob Hazelwood, who y'all know from GD Report. So we're going to give this a try, and hopefully it'll help some folks out with being able to recognize who's speaking, so that they can understand what that person is where he's coming from, his history, his background. Having a name with a face really helps people out. So as you can see, I'm not the only one here. We got jhunterz or Daryl. So welcome.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you. We did not have anything predetermined, pre-scripted, preset for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the GD message board and see what's going on, what some of the hot topics are, the worthwhile ones. There's usually someone where they're hot that we're getting into. But we'll look at one. First one that comes to my mind is the improving as a coach question that was posted by Shifty. Now, Shifty said that he'd been a player for a while and left and came back. And he's having some issues with the recruiting aspect. Daryl, have you read that particular post?
I just looked at it just a little bit ago, to be honest with you. I kind of thumbed through it, and I noticed he said something about not being able to make championship games or something of that nature. He felt like he was doing a lot of things well, but he was losing to teams that were lower in team ratings or something like that, as opposed to his team. So I just kind of seen he had some answers from people. I just kind of thumbed through it a little bit and didn't know that I really had too much that I could offer him. I mean, I don't know when he says team ratings, if he's just looking, at, when you actually just go in there and you do look at what the complete, total team rankings are. I don't look at any of that stuff because to me, it's more fluff. It's got everything added in that has nothing to do with anything. So even though he's, he's concerned with teams that are supposedly lower rated than his, when in all actuality, they might be actually better, just simply for the fact that his team might have higher ratings and durability and stuff like that really has no place in the game at this point. So I think he's got a false sense of what to be looking at. So I think that would probably be more of his problem than anything, as far as looking at the fluff and thinking that it has something to do with it, and it doesn't. Right. So he probably just needs to look more into the cores for individual players and positions and things like that, and that's probably where he's going to see that he's actually losing more in that area than he is anything else. Could be game planning. Like I said, I haven't delved into his problem or anything, but like I said, he brought up the whole team rating thing. Like I said, it's if he's looking at that part of it, then yeah, he's probably got some misunderstandings with what he really needs to be looking at. So as long as he can get that straightened out, he'll probably be fine.
Yeah. I noticed that the feedback is only when I'm talking, so I'm thinking it may be coming through your audio. Is there a way to turn your volume down a little bit and see if you can hear that? Let's see if we get a good test. Test 1, 2. And it's still a little bit there, but yeah, that helped it a bunch. But can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, that cut it out. So yeah, I guess that was that feedback. You touched on the total rating aspect, and that's one of the things that I had a difficult time in comprehending when I played, is that there are categories that really don't matter to that particular position. For instance, you can have a quarterback with a 50 arm, a 50 GI, and a 50 tech, for instance, and great athleticism, but he's got a 90 blocking.
Yeah.
So, his total rating is through the roof compared to the quarterback who has a 10 blocking, has a 60 GI, a 60 tech, and a 60 strength, and his total rating is, 100 points less than the previous guy. And we've seen it many times where those are the targets that get overlooked because their total is not as high as some of the others that are on the list. And it, as you said, it really is just fluff in certain categories. Like I said, you don't need a quarterback with a high blocking rating. It doesn't do a whole lot. It's like having an offensive lineman with a tremendously high tackling rating.
Right.
He's only going to help you in interceptions or fumble returns on the rare occasion. And that's not worth recruiting.
When he never has to use that.
Yeah, exactly. If you're worried about that, you got bigger issues overall. But in his case, I can see where he has a couple areas that he could improve on just by, and I even posted this as a reply, just by trying some different things. Too often we find ourselves looking at the reality of NFL or college football, and we know what works in real life. Well, this is X's and O's, ones and zeros. This is a computer-based simulation that in some regards may be slightly off in one area or one aspect of the game, but you'll never find that unless you try some different things. In real life, can you constantly throw to the running back and have success out of a wishbone or out of a Notre Dame box? Unlikely. Teams will shut that down. In this particular game, with the right setup, you can have tremendous success doing that. Yep. So, there are times when you want to go ahead and try to tweak your game plan, tweak your depth chart, move people around that you may not think are best suited for a particular position or a given situation. You may find that they have a category or an attribute that you hadn't even thought of that is valuable to that position. And you'll find that through that trial and error, what works and what doesn't. But more importantly, it gives you a better foundation to build your programs on, because once you know what players do well in certain situations and certain positions, that leads right into recruiting and how you recruit, who you recruit, and what you recruit for. And as you get better players to fit your scheme, the wins are going to come. The success as a coach is going to come. And before you know it, those championships, conference championships particularly, will start to fall your way. But again, don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to, cast one or two sim games to the wayside and just try something different. What's it going to hurt? I mean, if you're struggling, if you're having a problem, what's it going to hurt? And I'm looking at, I like what Big Papa replied as well. He said, make sure you go over the box scores, the play-by-plays, and analyze your recruiting. See what other recruiters are doing that works well for them. Very key aspects as well. You can't just throw a game plan together, have the game run, and then never look at it again.
Right.
What happened in that game? What transpired? What occurred that worked well and what didn't? And the only way you're going to know that information is to go into the play-by-play, is to go into that box score. Who was on the field on that long drive? Did that drive stall? Who came off the field? Do you need to adjust your substitution rate? Do you need to keep that guy that's having a hell of a ground game in the game, 5 more percentage points for substitution? Do you need to knock that down from a 90 to an 85? Those are the things you want to try.
Yeah.
And when you find out what works, tweak it a little bit more. Don't be satisfied with the way it is. Always learn. I know you're one of those guys who's never quite satisfied with the way things are going and always trying new things.
Yeah, I was gonna say I always thought that I was a great recruiter, or I shouldn't say great, but that was the best part of my game, I thought. And then, I thought I've always said for years that I'm like, I said, my game planning is my game planning. It's my game planning. And then, I took over some teams that had other coaches had recruited for them, and I played very well. My game plans worked excellent with it, and so then, it started making me think, well, wait a minute, maybe you're just not as good as a recruiter as you think you are, and I got kind of caught up in the whole guest ratings. You look at it, of course, you want to be at the top because, everybody wants to be at the top. And, but I think I got kind of caught up in that. And I use Bob's ratings pretty much how he's got it. There's a little bit of differences that I, weight a little bit differently, but for the most part, they're pretty close. But I think that might have been my issue, is that, I wasn't putting as much weight on certain aspects of recruits that maybe other people were, and then, you try and do, of course, everybody wants to try and do as best they can, but then you get to, you have some of times where, recruiting just doesn't go the way you planned it to go. And next thing you know, you're settling for whatever you can get. Whoever's going to sign with me, I don't care what his work ethic is. I don't care, as long as he is in that position, so we've all kind of crossed that at one time or another. So sometimes your plans go awry. I've set it down to where I have players that I'm looking at. I go through and I set down my 150 or whatever it is, that you get to start with, that you watch. And then I kind of, the day recruiting starts and you see, okay, all of them, there's Sims on everybody, you're like, except for a linebacker or a tight end or something like that, normally you might have an undecided here or there. But then it's basically, okay, who do I think I have a chance at? Who's going to get jumped early? And then after the first, 24 hours, then it's subject to change. So,
well, you bring up a good point about the 150, your watch list, if you will. A lot of players out there don't realize that you can have more than 150 players on that watch list. And the way you do that is, once it's full and recruiting has started, anybody that you now recruit or send any activity to will get added to that watch list. And you go down to the bottom and you can see, you've got your 5 values, if you will, and the additional one that's the main one. So you've got an opportunity to look to see how many you have assigned to each priority. But at the very bottom, it'll show you how many you have total on that watch list board. And as you add players after recruiting starts, that number grows, because once you set that phone call, or once you sent that scouting or a home visit, whatever, you do that activity, he's on there. So that's one of the ways that you can actually increase it. Now, me personally, I don't like to get 150 if I can avoid it. If I've got a class that I need to fill that's 10, 12, 13, I may not fill up that whole 150, because I know that once recruiting starts, there may be some guys that I thought would be out of my reach that nobody else is on, that I may want to keep an eye on. And I can simply do that by hitting that watch recruit after recruiting's already started, and that'll add them to the list as well.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways that you can manipulate that to benefit you outside of just having that solid 150.
Yep. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It depends on how many I'm recruiting and how many, a lot of it too, recruits, is how many good recruits you got in your area. There'll be times when I've got a plethora of people, and then there's other times where, I couldn't get 150 if I really wanted to. So yeah, it changes season to season. I don't go and set it, that I automatically, okay, I'm going to fill it 150 every time. I just kind of go through each position and I see how many, I need to fill at whatever position, and I just keep going. I look at my 360 and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of put in the ones, and I won't even pick everybody that's in my 360. I don't automatically,
Right.
I've been at most of my schools for long enough. I kind of have an idea of who I have a chance at. I know who the 1A teams are around me, the double A teams around me. And I kind of, it helps me. That's why I like to stay at certain schools or coach, you know, at the same school in different worlds. But I know kind of, who's there and what I can expect and which way I can go. And so that kind of gives me an added bonus as far as, in the recruiting. I have an idea of what to look for and how high I can go before I start getting nailed by 1A schools. But you're always going to get a curveball thrown at you with a 1A school. They lose
Right.
a battle to somebody, and the next thing you got Minnesota that's fighting with Ohio State on a recruit, and he loses out. Well, and you're on a pretty decent, a top tier, 1AA
Here it
recruit,
goes.
and then next thing boom, I'm at Northern Iowa, and here comes Minnesota.
Yeah,
I even had,
exactly.
well,
Yeah.
in Rockney right now, I had Ohio State come down and jumped on a defensive back I was on. I'm like, he's an elite, and I'm like going, what in the world? It's like, because
Well, that tells you how
the
good
guy
your
I'm on is
team is.
not elite, but it's just it happens, and you can't fault him for that. He's got to do what he's got to do, but it I think, and I'm getting a really good defensive back, and I'm all excited, and he's very high potential. And next thing I know, boop, he's gone. I'm like, plan B. So yeah, it
You
is what it
mentioned
is.
yeah, you mentioned the aspect of knowing, having a good idea of what kind of recruits you can expect to really go after with a realistically good chance of getting them, because of not just the location, but the people who are also within that recruit's range, that 360 or 180, whatever the case is. And when you're there for an extended period of time, along with some other coaches at those other schools, you do get familiar with that and that process. Now, when a new coach enters the mix, you got a new kid in the sandbox. Do you push him to see, or do you kind of sit back to get a feel for what he likes to do? Or do you do like I do and just go right away and try to extend your dominance out to him as well?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I do. Even if he's a 1A guy, and I pretty much just stay in double A. Even if it's a 1A guy and he comes in and let's say I was at Dartmouth, and he's an Army coach, and he's right there. We're neighbors, and he came in and yeah, I mean, if he comes on there, I'll even fight him a little bit, especially his first season, and
Sure.
not with the expectation of I'm going to win, but it's to let him know that I'm not just going to roll over. If
Exactly.
he does start, because I think some of the 1A coaches that specifically play 1A, they think once they're on a 1AA recruit that he's going to back off and he's going to quit, and it's basically he's got free reign of it. And for the most part, they could. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times they think they ain't going to have to spend that much money. Once a double A coach sees, a 1A coach on there, that they're just going to give up and not even go after it. But there's times that, if I've got the money and I've got everything else going the way I want and I feel comfortable, I'll try and stay on him, and not with the intent of winning him. I mean, I hope to, but it's basically just to let him know, I'm not just going to roll over. I'm going to put some money into him, and while you may win him, you're not going to get him for what as cheap as you had originally thought. And so then, of course, that it does tick some of them off, but it's the same way with us. Like I said, just with the Ohio State deal in Rockney, and like I said, I can't fault him, but was he an elite player? I don't think so. And I'm thinking, what's an Ohio State guy recruiting, because that's why I say I kind of go through and I look at where they're ranked and different things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature, and kind of gives you an idea who's going to come after them and how easy or hard it's going to be to get them. But I never thought in the million years that Ohio State would be jumping on this guy. So, but like I said, he ended up taking him and a linebacker I was on. So there must have been somebody else really good that Ohio State was battling for and had to spend a chunk of change on. And but like I said,
Yeah, you'll see
it's
that a
recruiting
lot
and it
where,
happens.
yeah, you'll see that where, the quality D1A schools will all of a sudden toward the tail end of recruiting start dipping their net into that AA pool because, like you said, they've been in a battle, they've lost. So, they got to come home with something. Mama wants to see something on the table, so they'll jump down and get that AA recruit. But, that brings me to another question. And I've talked with a couple different guys off of the show just over the past, I don't know, 10 years or so. When it comes to recruiting and you're down to that last scholarship and you've just had your butt kicked in the battle and lost. So the funds are low. But you're at a D1 school and you know that you can dip down, even down as low as D2 if you need to get a guy on your roster to at least provide a little bit of temporary depth, if nothing else. The advantage is by doing that, you sign the guy more than likely than you would if you had to struggle and try to land a 1A guy, because now your history shows that you signed all your recruits, X number of years. So that war chest is an unknown to future battles that may ensue. Or do you forego that one position where you have to drop down to a lower level to get a guy on your roster, or say to hell with it and just let your assistant coach grab the sim player that's going to be better than that guy at the lower level. But now you open the door to letting everybody know that you don't have any money in your war chest.
Yeah.
Good, tough one.
Yeah. And I've went both ways. More than not, I'm aggressive. I'm aggressive when it comes to recruiting. So, I don't have a problem with anybody knowing what I have. They don't know what I spent on somebody else. I mean, they know, but like I said, I try to pick my battles smartly. I don't win them all, but I think every battle I get into, I have a very good chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what they spend. They don't know what I spend. So we know what we started with, or around what we start with. But yeah, I don't enter any battle except for, like I said, if I trying to do something with a 1A school or something like that, to let them know I'm not going to roll over or something of that nature. But yeah, I'm just an aggressive person when it comes to that. I go after who I want, and then if I run out of money, I run out of money, but I'm going to give it everything I've got. But I for the most part, if it gets down to the end, I try and sign everyone, but I'll take it down to the final penny, and if I take a sim, I take a sim. It is what it is.
See, I'm the kind that likes to keep that mystery, to show that shadow of a doubt, if you will. So if you're entering in a battle with me and you're looking at my recruiting history and you see, oh, he's been at the school for 4 years, and his last recruiting, he picked up a sim player. So I know that he enters this recruiting session with just the bare minimum per player, plus whatever bowl money or playoff money they got. But he doesn't carry anything forward from the war chest from the previous year. So I actually do that. I will look to see, because it gives me a better position to make a decision. I'll look at that guy's history and see, oh, this guy's been at the school for 15 years. And just in his last 4 classes, there are no sim recruits. So he carried over a little bit of money. You don't know how much. You have no idea. But he's not starting from scratch. So he's carried over bowl money. He's carried over, the recruit per player money, or per recruit money. So, do I battle him with, 18 positions to fill with all that money, or go for a lesser quality player, same distance, same position, but the guy that I'm going to be battling with has got 7 positions to fill, and he signed a sim last year? So, you know that the second guy is going to have less ammo to shoot at you than that first guy all the way around. So, yeah, those are some of the things that these players like Shifty, we talked about starting off, those are the kind of things that will give you that edge, to keep you from wasting money that can be better placed somewhere else, that may land you a recruit to help you versus spending money and losing a recruit. And now you've got to do what I mentioned earlier, drop down a level or two to sign a guaranteed recruit that's going to suck and eat up a bench spot for you.
Yeah.
So, and those are the little things in this game that can make a difference, 2 and 3 years from now, seasons from now, because you've got a player on your team that is better than the guy that you were going after, because if he's not on your team, it doesn't matter how good he is.
Right. Yeah.
He's helping somebody else beat you is what it amounts to. So, yeah, those are some of the little strategies that you can do. And we talked about, tweaking your depth chart, tweaking your substitution percentage, tweaking your alignments or your game planning, tweak your recruiting as well. You have an opportunity to try a different strategy. See if it works. I mean, don't go full hog and, you got 10 people to sign and try it on all 10. Pick one or two or a position that you're currently strong at and try some different recruiting strategies. Try to go after that guy in Hawaii that's, 4,000 miles away. If you get on him early and nobody else feels like battling, you spent the minimum on a player with Sims on him to begin with versus spending 3 times that much on the guy that's in your 180, but you're battling in Ohio State.
Yeah. Well, I hope not to have to do that too much, but
yeah, those come back to bite you in a hurry. But again, like we were talking about Shifty's message on the message board, those are the things that you can try as a new coach. And to all the new coaches that may see this, that's the one thing in this game is it's your money. You play it how you want to play it. You set up, you recruit. And I laugh when I hear, they stole my recruit. Well, the only way they can steal your recruit is if he's already on your roster and they hack the system. Until then, he's not your recruit. They didn't steal squat. So don't be afraid to piss people off. There's going to be people out there who are ticked off. If you go in and you get one of the recruits that I've got green and you snag him in the last recruiting cycle, I'll shake your hand. Congrats. You had the balls to go after it and you did it. But guess who's on my short list?
Yep. Well, that's what I use. That's actually in the little reminders or whatever that's on your recruiting thing down there. I put down names of, because as the season goes, you'll forget. You got other things going on or whatever. But that's what I use my reminders for. I put on there which coach I owe, and so yeah.
Well, the reminders section, I sometimes leave notes for the next coach. And I've seen where, there was a coach that put a note on there for the team and it was a sim for like 14 years. And then I got it and lo and behold, here's his note. So, and he's not even playing anymore. Yeah. But I'll do that sometimes. I'll leave notes for the oncoming coach and say, hey, so-and-so likes to come in, and start his recruiting day 3 or 4, so keep some money set aside for this guy that likes to do that. Or, you can look at the formation and IQ and stuff and kind of tell what a team's setup was, but I'll even go so far as to, hey, this dude was a sky's the limit. Or, I was running this, my practice setting was set up for this. And, I was approving them for this purpose. Give the guy a little boost, a little hand up, if you will. I mean, I'm not sharing anything that he's not going to figure out or is going to turn around and bite me in the butt. Because if it is, well, then I wouldn't be sharing it.
Yeah. Mostly all I ever get to see is somebody's what they were recruiting, need a quarterback, need a, one quarterback, one, and that's usually about the only thing I ever get to see. But
I will say this. I will. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I will say this. I have seen one time where on my message board, it said, for a good time, call Mona, and it had a phone number.
That's a good one.
I did not call.
That we know of.
Yeah, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, you'll see some crazy stuff on there, and I leave messages on there just to kind of bring that gap, that bridge, or bridge that gap, as they say, from one coach to the next. And if it helps, it does. But if it's not, I'm not doing anything that's going to hurt the guy. So best of luck to the oncoming coach, and here's how I did things, and good luck to you. But like you said, that's a good place to keep personal notes. Who screwed you up in recruiting, so to speak.
And anymore, I've got more teams now than I've ever had, and so now I always have to put down there, what offense I'm running and what defense I'm running. Because whenever I'm recruiting, I'm thinking I'm recruiting for 3-4, and I'm actually for 4-3 or whatever. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm thinking of another team, and I'll recruit wrong. I've done that. Well, I did that for Arizona State in Wilk. I was totally thinking of a different team, and I was recruiting for a 3-4 defense when I was running a 4-3, and you run short on some defensive linemen, and guess what? It makes it a little bit tougher that way. So I have to leave notes for myself now that this team runs this, so you need to recruit this way for this one. But
yeah, that would hurt you if you're running a wishbone recruiting shotgun.
Well, I don't run there. I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to offenses. I've been wanting to try some other stuff, and with some of these other teams that I've picked up, I chat a lot with J9 and Grunt Boy and all them, and Ray, and so they got me talked into joining a couple other worlds with them, and so I'm trying to come up the ladder to get up there where they're at. But so I might try some different. The biggest thing I like I said, you run so many teams, but you only have so many playbooks, and
exactly.
So it's hard to run multiple offenses across them all, because you've got certain situational game plans set up, and so I can just quickly go in and say, okay, when I scout this team, this works well against them. Inside run works well against this team, so I've got a game plan set up for that, and then throwing to the halfback or throwing deep, or you've got a game plan where I can just go in and I can just boom, it's in there, and I've already got it set up, so I don't have to sit there and change my the single game plan I have for that world or something. So that's where I run into problems wanting to try different things, is because now I'm either stuck doing to where I can only have one game plan for that world, and I have to keep changing it to adjust to the next team. But that's really what's keeping me from trying to do a bunch of things, because it's just as easy to run the same stuff, and that way I've already got all the situational stuff set up, and all I gotta do is go bloop and put it in, and away we go. But that's why I say I'm kind of getting the itch to try some different things. I used to be pro set, and that was it. That's all I ran was pro set. And so I've got some teams where I'm running Notre Dame box and trips, and but I still have, there's a few teams I'm running purely pro set, and that's it. But, I've kind of tried to wet my feet a little bit here and there to open it up. But yeah, I'd like to try a team with wishbone here anymore. I've never done one with a wishbone, but maybe here in the near future it might happen.
I picked up one of Blitz's coming. I think he had, I want to say it was Oklahoma. And I picked that team up with a wishbone, and I couldn't get that thing to work right for nothing. Matter of fact, Ray's got it now. I dropped down to Miami in that world, and Ray's got the Oklahoma team, and he was blazing out the door. So I know it wasn't the quality of the players. It was definitely the lack of quality on the coach that kept them stuck in the mud when I had them. Yeah. I just couldn't get the handle, couldn't figure out what worked, what didn't. And again, I only had them a year.
Yeah.
And, that goes right back to what we were talking about. Don't be afraid to try things. It's not going to come in 1 or 2 games. It may not come in 1 season. Right. For me, Oklahoma, I couldn't get it to work no matter what I tried. Who knows? It may have been 2 or 3 more games, and I'd have figured something out, and it clicked, and then we'd gone from there. But so, as we said at the onset of this, don't be afraid to try, especially the guys coming out. Get the hell out of D3 as soon as you possibly can, so that you can actually enjoy the game and make the most of it. Your skills and your knowledge and your history of football, you can incorporate it at the D2 and above. You can't do diddly squat at D3. I don't care how much you try to mimic St. Olaf, you're not going to have it done.
Yeah, he just won. What world was it? He just won another one.
See, yeah.
Yep, Yost. I think he just won Yost.
My brother, love him to death. He's got it going, boy. He does.
I've like I said, I've got two teams down in Division III. I started up, new to meet up with these guys, and I went back down Division III, and I'm like, I couldn't wait to get out. I am so, yeah. But and that's. I've had kind of an argument going with, I shouldn't say argument, but it seems that way in the forums with Independent One, or however you pronounce his name. Where he was talking about he was complaining about abandoned teams and wanting to make it to where you have a choice of an automated recruiting. And right. I kind of see his point. I mean, I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, my argument is that I see that going wrong more than I see it going right. I think there's so many things that could make things harder on the coaches that are active. There's worlds now. The problem is it seems like the undecideds and things of that nature will change with the amount of coaches that are in that world. The less amount of coaches there are, the less amount of undecideds it seems to be. And so you go in these, worlds that have less and less people, and, you're lucky if you can find it. The linebackers and tight ends is about all you're going to find undecideds in. You're not going to, unless you really go down, the bottom of the barrel, like you said, and players that, really ain't going to help your team that much. And that's what I was trying to tell him was that, if you make it automated, at some point or other, I mean, what's the use? I mean, you're just
exactly.
I mean, you're there and everything's it's doing it all. If it's doing your recruiting and it's setting your game plan, it's setting your depth charts, it's it's doing everything for you. Do you deserve to win a national championship? I mean, you're not doing anything. You're just paying your money to be on there. That you can log in. So that's why I was trying to explain to him. I'm like, I could see it being in Division III, if that's going to be the learner, beginner mode or whatever, make it to where they can automate it there. But I'm like, at some point or other, they need to learn how to recruit. That's what's going to make you better. That's what's, is it easy? No. And that, I tried to explain to him, I said, we all started there. We all, we've all taken walk-ons. I still take walk-ons. And, but he's complaining. Well, he started off with abandoned teams, and I'm kind of, he says, that it lowers their strength of schedule and all that. And I'm like, you still make the playoffs. Right. I mean, if you're on the bubble and you're playing in an emptier world and you've got an abandoned team in there and that knocks you out of the playoffs, it probably wasn't the abandoned team that really did it, honestly. I mean, in my opinion, but that's, I like I said, I see where he's coming from, and basically he said he got an abandoned coach kicked out, which I didn't even know you could do that. I thought, if you paid, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know if it was Rainey or somebody that was at one team, and I mean, he had his team for 15 seasons or whatever and never recruited, and went 0 and whatever for the whole time, but they never, kicked him out. So I would be a little upset, if something happened or whatever, and I had to, I took a break or whatever, and I wanted to keep my team or keep that team for whatever reason, alma mater or whatever, and then come back and somebody's booted you because, somebody didn't like that, you were bringing down their strength of schedule. To me, that's not quite right. So
yeah, I agree.
Like I said, I mean, I can see his point of, it trying to. And then he got on to where, I think it was E. Katzen that brought up a point of maybe having like a wizard or a guide or something like that shows the newbies, kind of walks them through the methods of recruiting. And, you need to, give them a face-to-face, because that's not really, I don't remember if that's actually in there that tells you you'd have to face-to-face, or if it's, other coaches telling you, hey, if
you got
even, if you have a recruit that, an AC, scout or whatever went through during the season, and they start off green, he's already green for you without even putting anything into it. You still have to give him a scout
right
to be able to sign him. Now,
yeah.
whether that's actually wrote anywhere or not, but the rest of us
Mm-mm.
do know it. So I can see that, and I think that is a good idea. I don't know how they would implement it, because recruiting can go in so many different directions that, if you put it in there in black and white or in a guide and says, you got to have, 2 AC scouts and 3, head coach, scouts or whatever to get somebody to turn green, then a newbie's going to think, well, that's all I got to do. Well, how come he didn't turn green? And
yeah, that's true too.
so you kind of have to watch, how you word things and how they put it in there, because then they're going to take that for, the golden rule, and it just isn't always like that. I mean, recruiting is it's the hardest part of the game, because that's the hardest part of the game. It changes,
exactly.
and even us best, the best coaches out there still have a problem with it. It just, you never know what's going to happen from one cycle to another. But
the only way you're going to learn is to do it
right, and that's what I tried to kind of explain.
Somebody do it for you is not going to help you. That's not even a Band-Aid on the problem. That's closing your eyes to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little blood on your knuckles. Go out there and do some banging around and some fighting. Figure out what works and what doesn't. And then, again, right back to the beginning of the show, we talked about don't be afraid to try new things. And, how can you try new things in recruiting if you're not even going to put forth the effort to recruit to begin with?
Yeah.
Even if it's a lame or an unsuccessful season, you learn something from every single season. I've been in this game now for over 15 years, and I learned something with every team, every season, without fail. There's always something. More times than not, I learned where I screwed up, because, like you were saying, I thought it was one team and it was actually a different one. I don't know how many times I've gone in and looked at let's say, for instance, Missouri. I'm on the Missouri, and I put in an Oklahoma game plan, because I'm thinking I'm in Oklahoma, and it screws stuff up. Or,
yep.
You make mistakes. I always say, it's like the old carpenter thing, measure twice, cut once. And, when I was in the Air Force, I remember guys used to, come up and say, hey, Sarge, you think I need a haircut? And I used to tell them, if you think that you may need a haircut, go get a haircut. Why ask? If it's that close to where you're thinking you need to do something, go do it. If you think, did I set the right offensive game plan? Go check. Did I send this recruit a scholarship? Go check. I have lost recruits because I didn't send them a scholarship and they were green to me. And one cycle is all it took for some other coach to see that I didn't sign him.
Yeah.
He's a backup. And next thing I know, the new coach dumps a bunch of money on my green recruit, and he's gone.
Yeah.
For $100. If I'd have spent $100. So yeah, if especially new guys, if you think you may need to double check something, double check it. It's just a few moments, and it'll save you embarrassment. It'll save you a headache. It'll save you frustration. It'll save your seasons in some cases. But we're at the 45-minute mark, and Daryl, I appreciate you popping in, joining with me. It's always great to chat with you and bounce ideas off of you. And hopefully, in this episode of This, That, and the Other, somebody that's tuned into it will have taken a little golden nugget and learn something. And hopefully, they'll tune back in or post a message, and we can discuss that on one of the future shows as well. But again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you being here, buddy.
No problem.
All right, folks, you've been listening to This, That, and the Other, and we thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. I'm Magic. Good night.